am I attached to my story? And is there a way to detach from my story? What can I do about it? In a second. We all have stories, and so do I have a story about who I am. And if you were to ask me, or if I was to ask myself, who am I would have a whole list of this narratives of who I am, where I was born. I was born in Glasgow, I grew up, I was bullied as a child. It went on for a certain amount of years until I got to secondary school. I went through all these kind of things. I had a happy childhood and so on and so forth, and went into secondary school, flunked some exams, didn't pass, got some good O levels, didn't leave with any education to think of, went on my, and so on and so forth. And some of the stories kind of get in the way, and we get really attached to them. And I have become attached to my stories. And sometimes I ask myself, is this something that's getting in the way, and can I detach from it? And especially with, as I've been talking over the last few days about my shame story, my shame narrative. Now, I don't know if that's what's actually getting in the way at the moment or not, but it's an option. And it's also an option that I kind of hang on to. And so what would happen if I chose to detach myself from my story? And I'm talking particularly about my I'm not good enough story. And so, can I actually choose a different story? Is that possible? Well, in my investigations to try and help myself out, I've come across expressive writing. And this particular method is called the Pennybaker protocol. And I'm going to go through this, and I'm actually going to do it. And I'm going to start tomorrow, and I'm going to do what the protocol asks from me and see if it will work. So the first thing is, I'm going to write for a minimum of 20 minutes per day for 4 consecutive days. Right, so this is not going to be easy for me. Anyone that's been following me on this will know that that's not an easy thing for me to do anyway. So that's another committed action. I'm going to take my journal and I'm going to write for a minimum of 20 minutes. And that's a monster amount of time for me, for 4 consecutive days. So at least it's not for a month or something. And the topic can be what I choose to write about that's extremely personal and important. Okay, so something that has deep meaning for me. Now, the idea of the protocol is that I've got to write continuously, and I'm not going to worry about punctuation or spelling or grammar. And if I run out of things to say, the protocol tells me to draw a line or just repeat what I've already written. So the idea is that I keep my pen on the paper, right? I've heard of this before. I've never done this before, so this is new for me. It's a challenge within the challenge. Now, I'm only writing for myself, so don't expect me to share this with you. And I might plan to destroy it or even hide what I'm writing or burn it. I'm not going to turn this exercise into one of those kind of letters. It's just an exercise for me. And I'm going to observe the flip out rule, which is If I get into the writing and I feel that I'm getting overwhelmed, or I can't write about a certain event because it's going to, what they call, push me over the edge, then I'm going to stop the writing. So I'm not going to do it under all circumstances. And the protocol says I've got to expect heavy boots, which means that there's a good possibility that I'm going to feel a down in this, that it's going to weigh me down. I'm going to get into a saddened, emotional state as I'm expressing my inner feelings on paper. And this is to be expected, especially in the first day or so. But the good news is it's not going to last for too long. So hopefully not. So the idea is that in my writing, I'm really going to let go, right? So I'm going to totally go for freestyle, explore my deepest emotions and thoughts about the most traumatic experiences in my entire life. Now that's pretty tall order. So if you're doing this with me, then remember, if it gets too much for you, you can stop. So I also might tie this trauma into other parts of my life. So it's not just going to be about that shameful event. It might be with my relationships with others, including my parents, my intimate relationships, my friends, relatives, or other people that are important to me. In other words, all is on the table. And I might even link my writing to my future. It doesn't always have to be something in the past, and who I would like to become in my future, or to who I have been, or who I am even now. So this is a big writing experience for 20 minutes a day for 4 days. Now, not everyone has had just like a single trauma, and we've all had some sort of major conflict and stressors in our life, that's for sure. And I might write about these as well. So all my writing is confidential. So if you're doing it with me, there's no sharing of this content. You just keep it to yourself. You don't worry about the form or the style or the spelling or the punctuation or the sentence structure or the grammar. The idea is you just keep the pen on the paper at all times for 20 minutes. If you can't think of anything, you just draw lines, doodle. And so what's the outcome? Well, a week or two after I've completed these 4 days of expressive writing, I want to be able to reflect on what I've noticed in my life, how I feel and how I behave since then. And that I might actually share with you what I've discovered. So this is a bit of a adventure for me to see where this expressive writing takes me, and if it will allow me to detach from this shameful story that's...
Benyaacov-Kurtzman has embarked on a 12-week daily live challenge to disseminate a mixture of knowledge, combining his hand-picked golden nuggets from his personal library together with his decades of experience and learning. He is doing this as a committed action to service his values of contributing and helping others, using himself as the subject of this exercise, despite his feelings of awkwardness, anxiousness, and shame, which usually forms a barrier of uncomfortableness within, holding him back from accomplishing his goals. Dov Benyaacov-Kurtzman is an accomplished psychotherapist and clinical social worker with many years of learning and experience. And yet his self-disclosure of his vulnerability and openness is to demonstrate the human condition that we all experience from time to time. Disclaimer: the contents of this podcast, such as text, graphics, images, and other material contained on the podcast, are for informational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your mental health professional or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding your condition. Never disregard professional advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast.